You want to be an artist, but you don't know where to start. Lucky for you, you made it to this video. Here are the 3 important things you need as any artist, especially if you're beginning. Before we get into these 3 things, just know the most important thing to do is practice. If you just keep drawing, you'll be good. You will get better, no matter what. You just have to keep drawing. 20 minutes a day is like the golden rule. Draw 20 minutes a day. What are you supposed to draw? Well, draw whatever you want. Look up an image on Google. Look up anatomy. Number 1, anatomy. Anatomy is just talking about something like circles, shapes. Everything is just that. And I can prove it to you. Just take a look at this. If you think about a head, or if you think about any shape, you're thinking of like circles. For example, if you want to draw a human body, it's just making circles and lines like rectangles or triangles. And if you can draw shapes, which you're thinking, yeah, I can draw shapes. Well, if you can draw shapes, then you can definitely draw the outline of a body. And why do you care about that? Well, that's anatomy. Anatomy is very important because you're trying to learn how a body looks. And you can superimpose anything you want onto that anatomical structure, whether it be an anime character or your favorite person or whatever you want, an animal, whatever. It just comes down to shapes. You can use those shapes and you can draw. So anyone can draw. Take that excuse out. The reason you need to learn anatomy and structure is because you want to know how things are supposed to look. You can draw things in poses in ways that you can manipulate. So, like I said, first, make sure you're practicing. Just draw whatever you want, 20 minutes, whatever you want, but also practice this on the side. Maybe give this another 10 minutes. Draw for 20 minutes, give this another 10 minutes. Draw in a way where you're drawing poses or people. Just look on Pinterest. Take images that you like and just try to draw them. And you can break down, you can see if you search anatomy on Pinterest, you can see what shapes are supposed to look like. I know it looks confusing, but all you have to do is it's just breaking down the head and the body and the torso and hands, everything else into simple shapes. Shading and materials. Now, what does shading mean? Shading just means the way light hits things. And the best way to do that is just have a light and then just draw something. For example, you can draw like a pen or a container or even like a pill case or whatever you have, like a pill bottle or whatever. Just look at the way that the light is hitting it and where it's darker when it's lighter, or where it's shinier or it's not shiny. So using that, you can see different textures and things. Even if you just put a pencil in front of you and just draw that pencil, that makes sense. Just shine light, take a light, maybe your phone light or something, and move it around the image. And when you do that, you can see that the shadows it makes and casts are completely different. You draw that enough, you'll understand how shadows work. Now, that's the shading and shadowing part. Some people like having exact shading. Other people's, or if you did anime or some other cartoon things, they might not have full shading. It depends on you. That's why you seeing different images and practicing helps that you figure out your shading, what type you like. But you should still practice different types of shading, the cartooning or the people shading or whatever type. The textures now, what we're talking about is cloth. So when you're thinking about something that's loose fitting, like you're seeing on me, you can see that the folds in the clothing are completely different. You can draw these folds, and if you have something else, for example, that's thicker, then you're going to see something like if you had, for example, you have something like leather, you'll see it doesn't move much. Or maybe you have a ruler and you can see that it's more pliable or it's a little bit rubbery. Structures like that and have different textures. Like, for example, here's a loose fitting cloth on my arm. Now here's a tight fitting cloth. You see, look at the difference. Here's just loose fitting like this, and here's tight. You see the wrinkles that come is completely different. Now, if I was wearing a leather jacket, it wouldn't do that. You have to look at the material. And again, how are you supposed to do that? You have to draw different things. Take a look at different images. Look at somebody who's wearing a hoodie. Start by drawing somebody who's wearing a hoodie or a loose-fitting shirt. Search that on Google. Then search somebody who's wearing a tight-fitted shirt and draw that. And you can see that there's different textures. Then maybe somebody's wearing a leather jacket. That way you'll get an idea. And now you can replicate that in any other clothes. Important thing about clothes too is you have to see the foldings, the way the folds are going on the clothes. Now you see everything. Now you're understanding why everything is going back to drawing and just practicing. Because as you draw naturally, you'll start seeing things like you'll start seeing these folds, you'll start seeing these shades, you'll start seeing these shapes. All these things will start coming together when you practice. But particularly if you pay attention to the shading and these folds, those will be really important if you want to become a good artist, is coloring. Now, you have to learn different ways that colors interact, and that goes with the shadowing and shading thing. I know we talked about shadowing and shading in before, but what we're talking about now is different types of shades, which goes with shadowing basically. Like for example, if you're drawing a color on somebody, it's not that shadows will always be black. You might have something be a darker skin tone of peach, or if you look at my mask, for example, there's other ways that it'll fold, and then there's darker areas to it. Same thing with maybe some reflections that you're seeing from the light from coming on here onto my face. You'll see that it's darker, but it's not black. So you'll have to learn to blend colors in a way that it makes it look a little bit more realistic. Like I said before, other things like cartoons and anime might not do this exactly, but still, you can still see that shading will come at different examples. For example, look at my hand right here and look at it with the light. You see that there's different areas that of coloring. If you were coloring this, how would you color this? Well, you'd probably use like a peach color, and then you'd use a darker peach color wherever you barely see it, wherever it's darker, you see? So the important thing is learning that contrast, but that can come with time. So again, just a quick recap, just to give you a quick recap. You're practicing every day, you're doing 10 minutes of anatomy, then you're doing 10 minutes anatomy, then you're also making sure you're practicing your shading. And a good example of that is just taking anything and just putting light to it and see how it manipulates light. Maybe 10 minutes of shading, and then that's it. Maybe you spent like 40 minutes, and once you get good at drawing, you start coloring your drawing, use different medium. The bonus tip since you made it this far in this video, and this will really help you become an amazing artist, is you have to use different types of medium. Don't just draw with colored pencils. Use alcohol markers. Use pencil shading. Use different types of medium. Draw different characters. Don't just draw cartoons. Draw something that looks like a graffiti art. Draw something on a paper that looks like graffiti. Draw random shapes. Draw from your imagination. Draw anime. Draw real people. Draw realism, hyperrealism. You have to keep drawing different things. And if you keep drawing that, you'll not only develop your own style, but you'll also be a much better rounded artist. And that's the secret of everything. Try watercolors. Try different things. Try clay. Try different sculptures. Art isn't just about being good at one thing. Art is an art. And by that, I mean it's about practicing different ways. So if you use different mediums, you'll become much better of an artist. Use crayons, use colored pencils, use everything at your disposal. And the more you practice with different mediums, the much better you'll get. If you want, I'll